Welcome to the Fate Spun channel, a place where every story will make you feel, wonder, and hold your breath. Are you ready? Then go ahead. Story number 1, The Stranger in the Shadows. Alright, so this happened a couple of months ago, and I haven't told anyone about it until now. I guess sharing here is easier than saying it out loud to someone I know. I live alone in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. It's not much, but it's mine, and I've always liked having my own space. Until recently. It started one night when I was up late scrolling through my phone. My living room has this big sliding glass door that opens to a small patio. I had the blinds open because it's usually nice to see the city lights. That night, I felt like someone was watching me. You know that weird feeling where the hair on your arm stands up and your gut tells you something isn't right? Yeah, that. I glanced at the glass door, and I swear I saw a shadow move across the patio. I froze. My first thought was that it was just my reflection. But then I noticed the shadow didn't match my movements. My hand shook as I slowly reached for the remote and turned off the TV, plunging the room into darkness. The shadow stayed there, just outside the glass. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I convinced myself it was nothing. A trick of the light, maybe a stray cat. But then it happened again. This time, I saw the shadow clearly, tall and human-shaped. It stood motionless, just beyond the glass. I called out, "Who's there?" But there was no response. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a broom, and stepped toward the door. Just as I reached it, the shadow moved, but not like a person. It glided away, smooth and silent. I reported it to my landlord, who shrugged it off. "Probably a neighbor cutting through," he said, but it wasn't. The shadow kept coming back, always at night, always standing in the same spot. One night, I got brave, or maybe just stupid, and decided to record it. I set up my phone to film the patio, while I pretended to sleep on the couch. When I watched the footage the next morning, my stomach dropped. The shadow didn't walk into frame, it just appeared, like it had materialized out of thin air. And then it moved toward the glass, standing there for hours, staring at me. The next day, I packed a bag and stayed with a friend. I couldn't go back after that. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't human. Now I'm crashing on my buddy's couch while I look for a new place. Every time I close my eyes, I see that shadow standing at the glass, waiting for me to come back. And I know one thing for sure, I never will. Story number 2, Don't Open the Door. I've always been a night owl, so staying up late isn't unusual for me, but lately I've started regretting it. There's something about the silence after midnight that feels heavier than it used to, like the darkness is hiding something. Last Thursday, I was sitting on my couch, headphones in, watching some random show. It was around 1:30 a.m. when I heard it, a soft, deliberate knock on my front door. Now, I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood, and at that hour, nobody just shows up unannounced. I paused my show, pulled out one earbud, and listened. Another knock, this time louder. I got up, my heart already racing, and crept toward the door. My apartment doesn't have a peephole, but there's a small window next to it. I peeked out, but the porch light wasn't working, so all I could see was darkness. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer. I waited for what felt like an eternity, staring at the door. Then another knock, this one sharp, impatient. I grabbed my phone and texted my downstairs neighbor, asking if they were at my door. The reply came almost instantly. "No." Why? I told myself it was probably some drunk person who had the wrong apartment. But then I heard it, a whisper, faint but clear, coming from the other side of the door. "Let me in." Every instinct I had screamed at me to stay quiet. But curiosity got the better of me. I pressed my ear against the door, and the whisper came again, more insistent this time. "Let me in, please." It sounded wrong. The voice was low and gravelly, like it was being forced out of a throat not meant to speak. I backed away, grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I could find, and called the cops. While I waited, I sat in the dark, clutching the knife and staring at the door. The knocking stopped, but I could still hear faint whispers, growing fainter, as if whatever it was knew help was coming. When the police arrived, they found nothing. No footprints, no signs of anyone having been there at all. They checked the area and told me to call again if it happened. The next night, I stayed at a friend's place. When I came back the following morning, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Scratches on the bottom of the door, deep and jagged, like they'd been made by claws. I don't stay up late anymore. If you ever hear knocking in the middle of the night, don't open the door. Don't even look. Story number 3, The Forgotten Room. It was my first night in the new house, and everything seemed perfect. The moving trucks had arrived, and my friends helped me unpack. The house was spacious, affordable, and had a charm that made me feel like I had found my forever home. But there was one thing I couldn't shake: the strange feeling about the attic. The attic was the only room that hadn't been touched. It was locked, and the previous owner left no instructions or keys. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming it was just an old, unused space. But the nagging thought about the attic kept coming back. By evening, I was alone and starting to feel uneasy. As I walked past the hallway leading to the attic stairs, I heard a soft, creaking sound above me. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, but it grew more frequent, like something or someone was pacing up there. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling of unease grew. I stood by the door to the attic, staring at the old lock. I didn't have a key and didn't want to force it open, but I couldn't help feeling that something wasn't right. Around midnight, I heard the noise again. This time, it wasn't just creaking. It was more like tapping, almost rhythmic, coming from the attic. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the door. The lock was still old and rusty, but it looked secure. Then I heard something I'll never forget: a faint voice whispering from behind the door. "Please, let me out." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. Was it a prank? Or was someone actually up there? I considered calling the police, but something stopped me. The whispering continued. "Please, I'm trapped." I stepped back, unsure of what to do. Should I open it? Was someone really locked up there? I was alone, and it felt ridiculous to call for help. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed something strange. The attic door was cracked open. It had been locked when I moved in, but now it was ajar, like someone had unlocked it from the inside. I didn't go up. I didn't dare. The next day, I went straight to the landlord. I asked about the attic, and he seemed surprised. He told me no one had ever lived there before me, and the house had been empty for years. When I mentioned the sounds and the voice, his face went pale. "There's no one up there," he said quickly. "The attic's always been locked." I left the house immediately, not looking back. Whatever was in that attic, I knew I never wanted to find out. To this day, I wonder if it's still there, waiting for someone to open that door. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel, like it, and don't forget to leave a comment. See you in the next video. Good luck!